members of Congress, they were the servants of citizens. Citizens define the character of this state. So the teaching power became the counter to what La Follette feared most, which was the money power. When La Follette referred to the money power, I assume he was imagining Scott Walker's donor list. But when he was talking about it, he was saying that there was a power in our society that was counter to citizenship. It was a power that would amalgamate great fortunes and then use those fortunes not merely in the business sector, which was legitimate, but also in the political sector to advance their fortunes. And the only counter to that, La Follette believed, was citizenship. An informed and trained citizenry always ready to rise up and challenge the money power when it was on the march to take control of every aspect of our lives. And I think to myself, how well have our teachers in Wisconsin done? And I know the answer. Because little less than a year ago, on about the 4th or 5th morning of the struggle in Wisconsin, it was the morning after the Madison teachers and many teachers from districts around this region decided that they were going to need to do an in-service day at the Capitol. Because there was more education needed inside the Capitol than outside them. And so the schools were closed. Now, I'll tell you, I love listening to right-wing talk radio, where they will go on and on about how angry people were that the schools were closed. I want to tell you, in our household, we put it very simply. We said to Whitman, today you will get the first benefit of trade unionism, a day off from school. And it was one of the most wonderful, joyous holiday periods for parents and kids. Most parents took their kids to the Capitol. But as I was going up that morning, it was cold, snowy morning, a little bit of snow in the air, frigid. I'm driving to the Capitol, and I'm thinking to myself, I know Madison at 10 a.m. It's not hard to drive to the Capitol. You know, you just go up East Wash, you're there in no time. And yet, bizarrely enough, there was a traffic jam. It was not, things were not moving normally. I said, excuse me, I'm a newspaper editor. I need to get along here. I must accelerate. So I'm driving along, and things just aren't moving. And I'm like, what is the matter here? Because, of course, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, so to our idea, traffic jam is one car in front of us. But in Madison, 2 or 3 is still unsettling. And so I'm like, what is the matter? Why are we not moving as I try to progress toward the capital of our great state? And then ahead of me, I saw some flashing lights on police cars. I thought, has trouble arisen? And then as I got closer, I saw that trouble had arisen. 1,000 students from East High School who had the day off had used Facebook and Twitter to gather in the parking lot at East and then to walk the 2 miles to the state capitol to stand in solidarity with their teachers. They had learned from West High. And then I saw 6,000 students from the University of Wisconsin wearing the red and white colors of our state, marching to their capital to practice the citizenship that they had been taught in our great public schools. We had learned the lesson of citizenship, and our students are the proof of it. Yeah. I'll tell you, what happened a year ago in this state was absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely inspiring. I go not just across the United States, but around the world. I've been in a number of countries in Europe, Latin America, everywhere I go, people ask me about Wisconsin. Wisconsin is no longer a noun, it is also a verb. Can we do a Wisconsin? I'm not sure the English teachers may correct me on that. I remember sentence diagramming very well from 7th grade. But the reality is that Wisconsin has become something very remarkable. And I have seen it play out in so many great ways. Mostly with the people who we always say are having a hard time being citizens, having a hard time tapping into this. That's young people. About a week and a half into the struggle here, I was up at the Capitol, and Tom Morello, who was lead guitarist with the band Rage Against the Machine, then with the band Audio Slave, and now a solo artist, calls himself the Night Watchman. Tom is an old friend, old ally, who is the son of a public school teacher in Libertyville, Illinois. And their father was never there, and Tom says the reason that he is probably the only lead guitarist in a major rock band with a degree from Harvard is because his mom was a public school teacher. That kept their family together. It gave them the benefits and the wages they needed for him to achieve, not just as a great student, but also as a great artist. And when he heard that the teachers in Madison, Wisconsin, were under assault by a right-wing governor practicing the politics of austerity preached not by Wisconsinites, but by the American Legislative Exchange Council and the Koch brothers, he decided he would come and stand in solidarity with the teachers. And he put out a call to his fellow rockers. And rock and roll artists from across the country flew into Chicago. They couldn't get to Madison that day. It was snowing too hard. And so they jumped in a van. And, you know, Tom is a multi-millionaire. He's a very wealthy man. I'll tell you, start a band called Rage Against the Machine, play your guitar really well, you make a lot of money. But Tom's there, crammed in the van as if he was just starting out in rock and roll. He's there with a whole bunch of some people from the Dropkick Murphys, which is a great old ska punk band. All sorts of other folks coming up to Madison. They get to the Capitol. They play a great set. It's really cold. It was the most rockin' version of Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land that you've ever heard. And people not from Wisconsin, they would see the video, they'd say, wow, I've never seen people jumping up and down like this to This Land Is Your Land. It's so exciting. Those Wisconsinites, they have such energy. We didn't tell them it was very cold that day. And so they're all jumping up and down. They're all having a great time. And then he says, well, you know, afterwards we're going to do a show down in the basement of Monona Terrace. And hope you'll come over. You can if you're around. Well, I went over there that night. Walked into that basement area, and some of you were there about a week ago Tuesday. I don't know if you recall. We had a bit of a gathering. So we went into that basement, and there's 5,000 high school and college students. Not 5,000 grizzled union activists who have been trying for 30 years to get somebody to care. 5,000 high school and college students jammed into the basement of Monona Terrace. And Tom Morello played, but then the band from Boston, the Street Dogs, played. I'm sure many of you are big Street Dog fans. And the Street Dogs are great. They're an kind of Irish punk band. The lead singer of the Street Dogs used to be the lead singer of a band called Dropkick Murphys, very successful band. And he quit in the 1990s because he came out of a firefighter family. And when his number came up in the Boston Fire Department, he quit an international rock and roll career because, you know, when you're in Boston, your number comes up for the fire department, you don't miss it. So he became a firefighter. Became very active in the firefighters union in Boston. And interestingly enough, when George Bush used 9/11 as an excuse to go to war in Iraq, Mike McColgan quit the fire department. Because he said there was something more he needed to do. He had to go back to rock and roll. And he needed to create a highly political rock and roll band that would fight back against wrong-headed, right-wing leaders in this country. And he formed the Street Dogs. And they're 100% pro-union. So he gets out there in Madison, he's introduced. Nobody's didn't know him. And he said, I can't repeat some of the words, but we come from Street Dogs. We come from Boston, Massachusetts. It's a lot like Madison. We don't take such and such from right-wing governors when they tell us what to do. And so we're about to sing a song here, and I want you to join me on the chorus. You're going to know what to do. And the song was this great old rocket thing. It sounded like it was being played in the post office in Dublin in 1916. But the chorus of it was the Union Up. And when they got to that chorus and they started chanting, the band singing the Union Up, here you have 5,000 young people, many of whom did not come from a union background, many of whom had certainly never been in a union, but many not even from a union family. And yet there they were with their fists in the air chanting the Union Up. And as Mike McColgan stepped off the stage onto the shoulders of those in the crowd and was held aloft by him with his fist in the air, I looked across that room and I said to myself, there are people who have spent their entire lifetime trying to get young folks engaged with unions and with political struggles. And the greatest union organizer of the 21st century has done it. Let us thank Scott Walker. Proving that young people will engage when they are needed. And let us also recognize the importance of what we show those young people now. And that's why I'm delighted to come and talk to you today, because you have this vital role. It is not merely about protecting your jobs, your wages, your benefits, and your pension. It is not merely about protecting your school. If you come from a rural district, your school is threatened. It is not merely about protecting public education in a state that has traditionally led the United States when it comes to public education. It is about showing a generation of young people that when you stand up to corrupt and immoral power, no matter how much money, no matter how much media, no matter how many connections that power has, the people can rise up and depose that feudal servant of corporate capital and replace that governor with a servant of the people and of public schools and of public education and of the future of this state. That is what this struggle is about. Now, I know that there's a roller coaster ride. I'm often, as I said the other night, I'm often accused of being an optimist. And I am highly optimistic about what can come of this struggle. But I'm not so optimistic that I do not notice that we go up and down, that there are good days and bad days. And let's be very blunt. There was a poll that came out this week, and I know you've all become political junkies and pundits in your own right, and so you follow these polls. And there was a poll that came out early this week that suggested that something like a majority of Wisconsinites were roughly evenly divided, maybe even the majority of Wisconsinites approve of Scott Walker. And I know how people felt on that day. I know you're like, oh my gosh, we've done all this work, we've done all this, and yet there's still, this isn't going to be easy. And I liked that poll. I approved of that poll, even though my friend Charles Franklin did it, and he acknowledges that they underpolled union households, but sometimes polling's not evil, it's just mistaken at times. They underpolled union households by 5%, they overpolled conservative households by 10%. And so the number was not as bad as it looked. But I like that poll. I like that poll because it made us all a little scared. It made us all realize that this is not a game, that we are not going to walk comfortably to victory, that it is going to be a long, hard struggle. That's good. That is healthy for people to fully understand what we're in. I didn't feel all that much better when I looked at the amount of money the governor has raised so far in this struggle. $12 million. Now, I make a lot of money, but I still think $12 million is quite a bit. And $12 million, and I thought to myself, wow, I didn't know Wisconsinites were that rich to give $12 million to a governor who is so undeserving. And then I looked at where the money came from, and I realized Wisconsinites aren't that rich. 61% of his money came from out of state. Most of that, the highest proportion, from Texas. And still I thought, well, this is not good though. Polling, a little troubling.